we all recognize this Duranto Express feeling. You know, this is post-lunch. It's not very appetizing, especially for after a great meal. But just to give you a symbolic representation that this is how we begin our career with one B.Ed course. God knows what quality plantain that we have been served. And this is what a system demands. You know, that you have to add so much to the plate that I even say symbolically that our banana leaf is even stretched. That you need to have the cognitive element, social element, and psychological, the intellectual quotient, the affective domain, and then suddenly there are new acts like Child Sexual Abuse Act, and then you have to have the RTE and the new curriculum, and so every day our plate is getting filled up. So, you know, the capacity building has become almost like a full-time demand on school systems. Just to highlight, in any school, any successful school, the third factor is, I think, a very, very key important, not to say the others are mutually exclusive, the professional capacity of school staff. I'm also being a little emphatic on the word school staff because school is a whole system, and while we, of course, put a lot of effort for our teacher building capacity, I think that we need to see that there are many other crucial members in the system that we need to also train. Most important are the 4 Ps, and again I'm highlighting the people component because schools are extremely HR intense, people intense industry. And I'm glad you made this observation, ma'am, that, you know, suddenly higher education is there and school education is here. And this whole dichotomy of, you know, school education itself is not considered, teacher education itself is not even considered in the arena of higher education is very, very telling. Just to give you, you know, I think when we talk about taking a path, we need to take stock of what the changes have been. I've just kind of highlighted it to say that our school systems have become very, very complex. You know, you have lots of regimentations, documentations, you have validations and evidences, and the system itself has become much more complex, hence the operation systems have changed. And we know now that good showplace campuses are not good social or school institutions anymore. You may have dramatic infrastructure and it could get you admissions, but you will not sustain those children in your campus unless you do something that's extraordinary. The typical standard classroom model of broadcasting lectures or solitary homework in the evening, it seems to make no sense, no real sense in the digital age. I call customers because I'm also looking at it from the point of view of a corporate. I know that some of us have a discomfort with the word, but I'm looking at also school as a service industry, and hence I'm coming from that point of view. Their expectations have skyrocketed, and customers also keep us on our feet in terms of our quality services. So they have a large list of expectations. Some are even beyond the, you know, beyond the jurisdiction of a school system itself. And there is a huge competitive market, so parents have a choice to make in terms of the schools. And they may not always make the right choice for their child, but the fact is that, you know, you have varied, you know, choices to make from, and some suits your pocket, some in terms of what's popular, some have gone by the, you know, the, like this earlier session we had, what the hoarding says, or some even go by, this is where my family traditionally graduated from, so you have lots of reasons for which you take. Another very, very important factor is the labor mobility. You know, today, in classrooms, you know, kids join in class 1, it's probably less than 30% actually graduate from the same level, especially in the metropolitan cities like Pune, where I come from. Parents move jobs middle of the year. And of course, we lose teachers and we lose the children, of course, to be filled up only by the new ones. But the demography and the profile of the classrooms keep changing every year. And though you may have one child coming from one CBSE school to another, we know that schools are not just about board and curriculum. Schools are about the organization culture. So there is a labor mobility issue. And of course, because of which we often lose the teachers, especially if they're female teachers. They're called the trailing spouse. So we do face attrition rate high, not because we are a terrible place to work with, because they probably have to move on with their families. Continuing with that, I think the most important is the change in the learner profile, that we have students with huge engagement issue. I was in the higher education track before lunch, and the secretary of ASCT talked about the comparative study between the American and Indian students, where he says the issue of engagement is very, very low. It's getting lower in the higher education. And we do have thrown up challenges in our classrooms with varied learning styles and preferences, IQ, which is a very, very controversial concept itself, but we do have children with varied learning abilities and emotional state. And today we have all children go through some kind of an emotional upheaval in their growing years. So there is no normal or abnormal child. Children have problem faces. So we are talking about children with emotional states and coming from very different social environment. We're talking about the RTE, which is giving another perspective of children coming from different class background and different social background. And we have children who are extremely techno-savvy, much more than, let's say, the adults that they are facing. And another scene is that the curricula and tests are getting more and more standardized on one level, and 1 minute, okay. And of course, the role of teacher is shifting from the content. Is it really 1 minute? Okay. Oh my God. Normally 1 minute is 1 minute. Okay. Yeah, I just want to leave you with 3 gaps I think somebody can fill up, because I think we're all on the same page. That, for some reason, schools are not talking about the skill building of teachers at the school education. Every higher education scenario that I'm sitting in, they're all talking about the expectations and the non-employability. But school education, we seem to be quite satisfied with the wealth of teachers available, and we move on. The second gap is the build-up of teaching as professionals. While we do talk about us as professionals, but look at the investment made in that. Today morning we saw 3.1% in the education sector of the entire higher education. And of course, in most schools you will see the training development budget itself is very, very low. And the third is the whole compartmentalization of schooling systems, that you have, the pre-primary separate, primary separate, and secondary separate. Higher education is completely separate. So we don't look at our learners going through a continuum, and hence every time the teacher is reinventing the wheel. Am I? Yeah?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.